Hello, I'm seeking advice because I made a significant mistake. Life seemed perfect until one pivotal trip. My husband, a 38-year-old male, and I, a 34-year-old female, had been together for a decade, navigating both good times and bad with open communication and trust. However, 6 months ago, everything took an unexpected turn during my work assignment away from home. During that month-long trip, I found myself involved in an affair with a colleague. It was a mistake driven by feelings of insecurity and doubt about my husband's loyalty. Our relationship had seen better days, and I allowed my emotions to cloud my judgment. I engaged in activities with my coworker that I had never even considered with my husband. Another aspect of my wrongdoing that I deeply regret is that we frequented bars and stayed in various hotels and motels when emotions ran high and desires took over. It felt like a return to wild, exciting college days, contrasting with my marriage. Returning home was heartbreaking, but we did so to our respective partners. My husband returned to his wife and newborn. After coming back from the trip, I intended to incorporate some things I learned during that time into our intimate life to add excitement, but held back so my husband wouldn't become suspicious. A few days ago, during a routine doctor's visit, I received shocking news. I tested positive for HPV. This revelation hit me hard, overwhelming me with regret and anxiety. I haven't informed my husband about the diagnosis yet because doing so would mean confessing to the affair. I am torn between the desire to be honest and the fear of causing him more pain. I genuinely want to make amends, mend the damage I have caused, and rebuild our trust. I acknowledge that our relationship isn't flawless, but I believe in our love and its potential to strengthen. The weight of guilt is heavy on my heart. While I understand he may not share the same optimism about our relationship, I want to support him in every possible way if it comes to that. I hope he can confide in his best friend for support, as I know they share a special bond. Financially, we are stable, and I am grateful for that. Money has never been a concern for either of us. We both have successful careers, no children, and 2 beloved dogs. However, we own a house in a different state that we are renting out while we rent a house in our current location. My husband had planned to move with me when I relocate for my assignment in a few months, but now that plan feels uncertain. I am filled with regret and worry about breaking the news to him. I am seeking advice on handling this delicate situation and saving our marriage. I am deeply concerned that my husband might also be at risk of HPV, and his well-being is a top priority for me. My hope is that we can summon the strength to heal and rediscover the love that initially brought us together. The path ahead is daunting, but I am ready to approach it step by step, seeking guidance and supporting each other during this difficult period. I need to find the courage to provide an update, as my life has taken an unexpected and devastating turn. I am committed to being honest about the mistakes I've made and the consequences I am facing. After much reflection, I made the difficult decision to confess my HPV diagnosis to my husband. I knew it was the right thing to do, but I couldn't have predicted the heartbreak that would follow. When I shared the news of the STD with my husband, he began asking for more details, and eventually, the truth about the affair emerged. Witnessing the pain in his eyes and the shattered expression on his face was excruciating. The agony was unbearable. He couldn't fathom how I could betray him so profoundly. He demanded further details, and although I shared some, I held back to avoid adding to his suffering or causing him more distress. Another individual was involved, my colleague, and I felt it wasn't my place to disclose sensitive information about him. Consequently, my husband, overwhelmed by rage and sorrow, has left our home, stating he needs space and time to process everything. I am utterly shattered, consumed by guilt and remorse. I deeply regret my actions and wish I could turn back time. Knowing I've inflicted immense pain on the person I love most is excruciating. It breaks my heart to realize I've shattered his trust. Currently, I feel lost and broken, unsure of how to repair the damage I've caused. Harming him was never my intention, yet I ended up doing exactly that. It feels as if I've destroyed everything we've built together over the past decade. I am clueless about how to fix it. The house feels empty without him, and I am constantly haunted by memories of happier times we shared. I desperately wish I could go back in time and make different choices, but I know I can't change the past. I'm sharing this update not to seek sympathy but as a cautionary tale. For anyone considering betrayal, the pain and consequences of infidelity are immense, and it's a decision I deeply regret. I am uncertain about what the future holds for us. For now, I'll respect his need for space and hope he can heal quickly. I want to apologize to him. I want to help him understand how genuinely sorry I am while addressing the underlying issues that led to my mistake. I haven't contacted my family or in-laws yet, hoping it doesn't come to that. I prefer to keep outsiders from getting involved in our marital issues. I've kept everything private. I hope he will do the same. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who provided advice and support in my previous post. I wish I had heeded the advice earlier, but my emotions got the better of me. My husband is a devout Christian, and I know he opposes divorce, as do his parents. They hold a "till death do us part" belief, even in cases of abuse. While I'm not particularly worried about divorce, I fear that our relationship may never be the same again. I don't want him to lose all respect for me. Since my last update, things have taken quite a dramatic turn. I wanted to share what's been unfolding. After I confessed about my HPV diagnosis and the affair, my husband essentially left, stating he needed time to process everything. I can't blame him, I messed up badly. But here's the surprising part, my husband is considering divorce. It's unexpected, given his deep commitment to his Christian faith and strong beliefs against divorce. Even his devoutly religious parents seem to support the idea. This development has caught me completely off guard. I never thought it would come to this. I was so certain that divorce was off the table. Even if my husband wanted it, I never imagined his parents would endorse it. They genuinely care about me, and I've always been their favorite daughter-in-law. I can't quite grasp this new reality. I tried reaching out to him to have a conversation and perhaps work things out. His parents intervened like superheroes, blocking any communication between us. They fully support ending the marriage, leaving me sidelined and unable to adequately explain myself. My husband is now entirely out of reach. Even if something were to happen to me, he wouldn't know because we are that disconnected. To make matters even more chaotic, my parents unexpectedly showed up. You know the saying about too many cooks in the kitchen? It got noisy and heated pretty quickly. Initially, they attempted to come inside, but I didn't allow it, so they confronted me on the patio. They blamed me, hurling insults and calling me reckless and other names for losing such a great man over a brief fling. I tried persuading them to come inside to avoid airing our drama to the neighbors, but they refused. This family turmoil is further complicating an already difficult situation. I'm feeling incredibly lost at the moment. I never wanted any of this to occur, and I deeply regret that my actions have led us into this mess. I am trying to come to terms with the possibility of losing the man I thought I would spend my life with. To everyone who provided advice and support last time, seriously, thank you. Your insights made me realize the importance of taking responsibility for my mistakes and attempting to make amends. This entire situation feels like a roller coaster, and I'm just striving to get back on track. It's messy and uncertain, but I'm not giving up just yet. If you ever find yourself in a situation like mine, please learn from my errors. Honesty and open communication are the foundations of any relationship, and the pain caused by betrayal is not worth any fleeting pleasure. Edit, I don't know if my husband has HPV or not. We weren't very sexually active after I returned, and he insisted on using protection every time. I'm sorry, but your regret isn't enough. You've completely destroyed his trust and betrayed him in the most terrible way possible. Please don't anticipate sympathy from anyone here. You've created this situation, and now you have to deal with it. I'm sorry, but I can't muster any sympathy for you. You cheated on your husband, plain and simple. You decided to betray his trust and break your marriage vows. Now that he's rightfully hurt and angry, are you seeking validation for your remorse? You're the one who messed up, and your husband has every reason to be upset. Your affair wasn't a mistake, it was a deliberate choice you made. Your guilt is the consequence of your own actions catching up with you. If you genuinely want to make amends, begin by respecting his need for space and giving him the time to heal. Your relationship may never be the same, and that's the result of your decisions. Your actions carry more weight than your words. You're upset because your husband discovered your betrayal, not because you genuinely feel remorseful about what you did. You've made a massive mistake, and now you're facing the repercussions. My parents initially tried to enter the house, but I stopped them, leading to a confrontation on the patio. They blamed me, calling me reckless and accusing me of ruining my relationship over a brief fling. Despite my efforts to bring the discussion inside to avoid public drama, they refused. This family conflict adds another layer to an already challenging situation. At this moment, I feel incredibly lost. I never intended for any of this to happen, and I deeply regret my actions that have led to this mess. I am struggling with the possibility of losing the man I thought I'd spend my life with. To everyone who offered advice and support previously, thank you. Your insights have helped me see the importance of taking responsibility and trying to make things right. The situation feels like a roller coaster, and I am trying to find stability. It's chaotic and uncertain, but I am not giving up. If anyone finds themselves in a similar situation, Please learn from my mistakes. Honesty and open communication are crucial in any relationship, and the pain of betrayal is not worth any momentary pleasure. I don't know if my husband has contracted HPV. We weren't very sexually active after I returned, and he insisted on using protection each time. I'm sorry, but regret alone isn't enough. You've shattered his trust and betrayed him profoundly. Don't expect sympathy from anyone here. You created this situation, and now you must face the consequences. I can't feel sympathy for you. You chose to cheat on your husband and break your marriage vows. Now that he's hurt and angry, are you looking for validation of your remorse? You made a deliberate choice, and your guilt is a consequence of your actions. If you truly want to make amends, start by respecting his need for space and allowing him time to heal. Your relationship may never be the same, and that's the outcome of your choices. Your actions speak louder than your words. You're upset because your husband discovered your infidelity, not because you genuinely regret your actions. You've made a colossal mistake, and now you are facing the repercussions. Your marriage might never recover, and that responsibility falls solely on you. Do not anticipate any sympathy from others for the poor choices you've made. That was quite an intense story. Now, let's shift gears to another compelling narrative. Stay tuned as we delve deeper. My husband and I had been together for approximately 9 years and married for 2. Before we began our relationship, I had only been involved in one previous relationship. Overall, our relationship was generally happy, except for our intimate life. He consistently had a much lower desire for physical closeness than I did. While I was open to being intimate with him more than once a day if he desired, he preferred intimacy only once a week. Additionally, he preferred engaging in intimacy only in the dark and during the middle of the night. This left me feeling unsatisfied most of the time, and I resorted to self-pleasure multiple times a day. Despite our differences in this area, he was my closest friend in the world. We were incredibly similar in almost every aspect of our lives, except when it came to physical intimacy. If soulmates exist, he was likely mine in every way except for this one. Despite the disparities in our physical relationship, our emotional and intellectual connection was so strong that I couldn't help but love him from the moment we met. We both struggled with depression and ADHD, shared the same major in college, and held the same core values. Unfortunately, some people made hurtful comments suggesting we didn't seem like a suitable couple because they thought I was too attractive for him. I knew these comments bothered him emotionally. He was a handsome, well-built man with a broad build and a beard. I found him incredibly physically appealing and frequently expressed this to him. Over the years, I made several attempts to discuss my physical needs with him, approaching the topic with love and empathy from various angles. My goal was to respect his desires just as I wanted him to respect mine. I understood that he wasn't obligated to engage in intimate activities with me unless he genuinely wanted to. However, I often couldn't initiate any physical intimacy with him because it would elicit a negative reaction, and he would wave me away. Although he had every right to do this, it still hurt my feelings. Whenever I mentioned feeling unsatisfied, it sometimes led him to spiral into self-loathing, feeling unable to please me, or making it clear he didn't want to discuss it. In our attempts to communicate lovingly about our intimate desires, there were moments when I felt so thoroughly rejected by him that I lost interest in pursuing closeness. The most effective approach was when I straightforwardly stated that I would like to be close to him, and he would respond with, "I'll consider that," and perhaps initiate physical contact in the middle of the night a day or two later. This leads me to my next point. I found myself developing crushes on many of our close male friends, especially those we had known for 5 to 10 years. I never cheated on my husband, but I couldn't stop these intrusive thoughts. The idea of divorcing him wasn't something I wanted. Instead, I desired a consensual intimate relationship with our friends, driven by the intense desires I felt when I was around them. Reflecting on our relationship, I realized how challenging it was to balance my needs with his preferences. His lower libido and specific preferences left me feeling unfulfilled and craving more intimacy. I sought ways to cope, but it often led to frustration and resentment. Even though our emotional and intellectual bond was strong, the physical disconnect created a void I couldn't ignore. As time passed, I became more aware of the emotional toll this situation was taking on both of us. Despite my efforts to communicate my needs and desires, the gap between our expectations only widened. His rejection, intentional or not, felt like a constant blow to my self-esteem and our connection. The frustration of feeling unloved and undesired grew, leading me to question our compatibility and future together. In summary, our relationship was a complex tapestry of deep love and challenging differences. The emotional and intellectual harmony we shared was undeniable, but the physical mismatch left me yearning for something more. As I navigate this tumultuous journey, I hope to find a resolution that honors both our needs and keeps the bond we've built intact. Recently, I found myself increasingly attracted to some of our single male friends. They paid attention to me and showed genuine care for us, even if they weren't as physically attractive as my husband. I caught myself daydreaming about engaging in intimate acts with them during social gatherings. Honestly, it was quite embarrassing. I knew these thoughts were unhealthy, but I felt compelled to explore them. There were moments when I felt like I had invested all my intense feminine energy into a man who, despite being handsome and wonderful, couldn't fully appreciate it. Sometimes, I simply wanted to share my body with my closest friends while maintaining our friendships afterward. I knew this might sound incredibly selfish. I briefly mentioned this to my husband, but he tended to avoid serious discussions about it. His usual reply was something like, "I'll just be more intimate with you," but unfortunately, he never followed through. Strangely, the more I gently brought up the topic, the less interested he seemed in being intimate with me. It was challenging because I wasn't just dealing with these desires in isolation. I was also involuntarily developing feelings for our close friends. It wouldn't have been such a dilemma if I genuinely didn't want to be unfaithful to my husband, but it felt like my body was strongly inclined in that direction. I sensed that the deep affection I held for these men as friends was spilling over into unwanted sexual longing, and I was unsure how to handle it. I had no intention of cutting them out of my life since they were so closely connected to us, and I didn't want to. I cared about them deeply. Then, on Sunday evening, we had some friends over, and one of our mutual friends sat next to me. I can't recall whose foot initiated contact, but we ended up discreetly massaging each other's thighs under the table. I became so aroused that I wished there was no one else in the room. Despite my attraction to our mutual friend, I was determined not to betray my husband. This internal struggle was becoming increasingly difficult to manage. These feelings of desire and affection for our friends were intensifying, and I didn't know how to navigate them without damaging my marriage. I often reflected on how my husband's lack of interest in physical intimacy contributed to my wandering thoughts. His reluctance to address my needs left me feeling neglected and yearning for the attention I received from our friends. Each time I tried to discuss my needs with him, it seemed to push him further away, complicating the situation even more. The emotional bond once shared with our friends was strong, which made the sexual attraction even harder to ignore. The thought of jeopardizing our marriage was distressing, yet the temptation persisted. I knew that acting on these impulses would be a betrayal, but resisting them required immense willpower. I continued to struggle with these conflicting emotions. On one hand, I wanted to remain loyal to my husband and work on our relationship. On the other hand, the unmet needs and growing attractions created a persistent internal battle. The more I suppressed my desires, the more they seemed to surface, causing frustration and confusion. Despite these challenges, I remained hopeful that we could find a way to reconnect and rekindle the intimacy in our marriage. I didn't want to lose the friendship and love we had built over the years. I resolved to keep trying, to communicate openly and honestly with my husband, and to seek ways to bridge the gap in our physical relationship. Ultimately, my goal was to preserve the integrity of our marriage while navigating the complex emotions and desires that had surfaced. It was an ongoing journey, one that required patience, understanding, and a commitment to working through the difficulties together. He continued to send flirtatious text messages, and I responded politely. I harbored a suppressed desire to be intimate with him, but my frustration grew because I couldn't be unfaithful to my husband. Throughout the night, my thoughts wandered into an imaginary realm where couples could be with other people with their spouse's consent, akin to an open relationship arrangement. One evening, while lying in bed, I finally gathered the courage to initiate a serious conversation with my husband about the state of our intimacy and my desires. It was a tough conversation, but I believed it was essential for the health of our relationship. I brought up the idea of having an open relationship, clarifying that it wasn't about seeking emotional connections elsewhere but rather addressing my physical needs with his awareness and consent. Initially, my husband was surprised and defensive. He found it difficult to comprehend why I couldn't find satisfaction in our relationship alone. The idea of me being with others was hard for him to accept, and he wondered if it meant I loved him any less. It was clear that he was feeling hurt and insecure, worried that he might not be enough for me. In the weeks that followed, we had many heartfelt discussions about the concept of open relationships, exploring both the potential advantages and challenges. He declined, citing concerns that an open relationship would be unbalanced, with me having more opportunities than him. I reassured him that I would facilitate opportunities for him to be with other women if that were the case. This process was emotionally challenging for both of us, involving discussions about boundaries and potential issues that might arise as we considered this journey. While my husband remained hesitant, I had a plan to persuade him. I knew one of his fantasies was to be with two women simultaneously, so I searched online for women interested in being with a couple. It took a few tries to find the right woman. On the first night we arranged, my husband had no idea about my surprise plan. When he returned home and entered the bedroom after his shower, he found me and the woman waiting for him. He was initially nervous, but we made him feel comfortable. It turned out to be an enjoyable experience for all of us, and my husband appreciated it too. As we navigated this new territory, it brought a mix of emotions. My husband began to see the potential benefits of exploring new experiences together while maintaining our emotional bond. Although it wasn't easy, our communication improved, and we became more open with each other about our desires and boundaries. This journey tested our relationship, but it also strengthened our connection in unexpected ways. Throughout this process, I remained committed to ensuring that my husband's feelings were respected and that our relationship continued to thrive. We established clear boundaries and guidelines to prevent misunderstandings and protect our emotional well-being. Over time, my husband began to understand that my desire for an open relationship didn't diminish my love for him but was an attempt to address our differing needs. We continued to explore this arrangement cautiously, always prioritizing our mutual respect and love. The experience taught us a great deal about ourselves and each other, fostering a deeper understanding and appreciation for our relationship. While it was a challenging path, it ultimately brought us closer together, helping us navigate the complexities of intimacy and commitment. Through this journey, we discovered new dimensions of our relationship, and I felt a renewed sense of connection with my husband. We learned to communicate more effectively and openly, creating a stronger foundation for our marriage. Despite the initial difficulties, we found a way to make this arrangement work for us, deepening our bond and enhancing our intimacy. After the woman left, my husband started to recognize the significance of my happiness and realized that completely suppressing my desires could lead to resentment and strain in our relationship. Gradually, he became more receptive to the idea of an open relationship. This change did not occur instantly, it required him to be with several different women on multiple occasions. Eventually, he reached a point where he felt confident enough to allow me to be with another man. This decision was made after we had engaged in threesomes with 3 different women. He expressed that when I eventually slept with other men, he preferred not to know any details about them. We set specific boundaries, such as the necessity of using protection, and we both had the liberty to terminate the arrangement if we chose to. It was explicitly understood that our agreement was purely physical, with no emotional connections involved. Additionally, my husband was adamant that we should not involve anyone we personally knew. Although I had some reservations about this condition, I decided not to contest it, hoping he might reconsider his stance in the future. It didn't take long for me to start a physical relationship with the mutual friend I had always found attractive. We had been exchanging flirtatious text messages ever since our playful footsie game at the table. Since he was single, I would visit his place after work before returning home to my husband. I didn't inform this mutual friend about our open relationship, as my husband preferred to keep it a secret. As a result, the mutual friend thought I was cheating on my husband, while my husband remained unaware of my affair with our mutual friend. I believed it was best for him not to find out, fearing it would trigger a strong reaction and insecurity on his part. I made sure to use protection to avoid any risk of unwanted pregnancy. After a month of our open relationship, my husband kept his promise and never asked about the individuals I was involved with. There was another mutual friend I was interested in having a physical relationship with, so I sent a flirtatious text, which eventually led to more intimate encounters. He had just started dating a girl, so we moved our communication to a more discreet messaging app called Snapchat. Eventually, we met up and engaged in physical activities multiple times. A few months into our open marriage, I was having intimate encounters with 3 different men and felt more fulfilled than ever before in my marriage. 2 of them were our mutual friends, and the other was someone I met online. However, things took a turn after attending a party where both mutual friends I was involved with were present. Out of the blue, my husband asked me if I was being intimate with the single friend. Seeing no reason to lie, I admitted it and said yes. He was hurt and initially wanted to end our open relationship. After he had some time to cool down, we had a rational conversation about it, and I promised to end the relationship with the mutual friend. It turned out that my husband had noticed the way we looked at each other and sensed something was happening. He even had me send a breakup text in his presence to end things with the friend he knew about. I not only ended the relationship with the friend he knew about but also with the other mutual friend he wasn't aware of, as I could see how much it hurt my husband. Reflecting on our journey, I understood the complexities and emotional challenges we faced. The experience taught us a lot about our boundaries, desires, and the importance of transparency in our relationship. While the open relationship had initially brought excitement and satisfaction, it also exposed vulnerabilities and insecurities that we needed to address. Our commitment to each other was tested, but through honest communication and mutual respect, we aimed to rebuild trust and strengthen our bond. Moving forward, we focused on fostering a deeper emotional connection and finding ways to meet each other's needs within the confines of our marriage. The journey was far from easy, but it brought us closer, revealing the strength of our relationship and our willingness to grow together. However, my husband was involved with only one woman whom I had introduced him to, and I started to worry as he began to develop an emotional attachment to her. My concern grew because he was spending more and more time with her. They were exchanging text messages frequently, taking walks in the park, and attending family events she invited him to. I confronted him about it, expressing my worry that he was forming an emotional bond with her while our open relationship was supposed to be purely physical. I can still vividly recall that moment, and my husband revealed news that would shatter our world. We lay in bed, the dim light casting shadows on our faces, as he spoke the words that would haunt me forever. He disclosed that the woman he had been involved with during our open relationship was pregnant and she intended to keep the baby. Shock surged through me, leaving me stunned as I struggled to grasp the gravity of his revelation. How had this happened? We had always agreed that our encounters would remain physical with no emotional attachments. We were supposed to use protection to ensure our encounters remained purely physical and didn't endanger our relationship. But now, reality shattered my illusion of control. Our established rules had been broken, and I felt an intense sense of betrayal. This was never part of our plan. Panic and anger surged within me, creating a complex mix of emotions. How could he jeopardize our relationship in such a profound way? With a heavy heart and a quivering voice filled with pain, I gave him an ultimatum. I asked him to request that she terminate the pregnancy, hoping to salvage the remains of our failing relationship. It was a desperate plea driven by the fear of losing the love and life we had built together. I wished that he would understand the seriousness of the situation and prioritize our bond over this unexpected twist of fate. But to my dismay, my husband made his decision. He chose her over me and over our relationship. At that instant, it felt like my world was crumbling around me. The man I deeply loved, the person I trusted above all else, had made a choice that shattered my heart into countless, irreparable fragments. He had opted for a life with her, leaving me feeling discarded and abandoned. To make matters worse, he appeared indifferent to the anguish I was experiencing. It seemed as though our shared memories and the love we once had become distant for him. I began to question whether his love for me had ever been genuine or if it had all been a mere illusion. Amidst the devastation, I recognized that I couldn't remain in a relationship where my feelings were no longer valued. The pain of witnessing him move in with her and watching their relationship thrive while mine crumbled was unbearable. I needed to find the strength to walk away and discover my own path forward. The process of ending our marriage was lengthy and filled with agony. It tested my resilience at every turn. As time went on, I continued to explore my sexuality, engaging with multiple partners much like I did during our open relationship. However, now it felt empty, lacking the love and connection we had once shared. These intimate encounters couldn't fill the void left by my broken heart. Deep down, I yearned for the love we had lost. I missed the laughter, our shared dreams, and the sense of security I felt in his embrace. Painful as it was, I understood that our love had been tarnished, irreparably harmed by the choices we had made. Do I regret suggesting an open relationship to my husband? I'm uncertain. Perhaps the right course of action was to divorce him because he couldn't fulfill my physical desires or my need to explore my sexuality. But in the end, we found ourselves in the same place. I divorced my ex-wife more than 5 years ago because she repeatedly cheated on me with over 13 different men and 2 women. To give you some context, my ex and I used to participate in swinging activities until the last year of our marriage. However, things had taken a turn for the worse, and I decided to stop swapping partners. Unfortunately, she disagreed with me and continued to have physical encounters with other men without my knowledge. 6 months before our divorce, my oldest child received a life-threatening illness diagnosis. I won't go into specifics to protect my privacy. As the pressure mounted, she began to struggle and started drinking heavily, putting herself and our children at risk. The situation deteriorated to the point where I had to move out of the house for a few weeks and took our kids with me. During this period, her best friend, whom we'll call Amy, approached me. My ex had recently confided in her during a girls' night out, revealing all her wrongdoings. She confessed that she had been sleeping with a different man every single night and getting drunk while the kids were with her. To my shock, she also admitted to leaving our 3-year-old and 4-year-old children alone at home one night a month ago while they were asleep, so she could meet up with a guy. Amy informed me that my ex planned to file for divorce after extracting more money from me, all while living rent-free in my house. Both Amy and I were appalled and realized we needed to put an end to this situation. My ex hated living under the same roof as me because she genuinely despised me and preferred to spend time with her lovers. We needed a strategy to get her out of the house and document her reckless behavior to limit her custody of the children. Step 1, I moved back into the house and sat down right next to her. She panicked, demanding that I leave immediately and threatening to call the police if I didn't comply. Unbeknownst to her, I was secretly recording the audio of our conversation. I told her to leave, and she called the cops to report a domestic issue. The police arrived quickly and handcuffed me before I could explain. The detective approached the squad car to speak with me, and I played the recording for him. As he listened, his anger toward my wife grew. Before long, our roles were reversed, and she found herself in handcuffs. They placed her in the squad car, and she spent the night in jail. She stayed with Amy for the following week since she wasn't allowed back in our house. During this time, I obtained a restraining order against her. She then went on a significant spending spree, buying a new laptop, a new iPhone at full price, and a whole new wardrobe. She emptied our joint bank account and started using my personal savings, showing a blatant disregard for our family's financial stability. I decided to document her erratic and irresponsible behavior meticulously. I installed security cameras around the house and kept detailed records of her spending habits and interactions with our children. It became increasingly clear that she was unfit to have custody. Amy and I worked together to gather evidence, and she agreed to testify on my behalf in court. We aimed to show that my ex's lifestyle was detrimental to the well-being of our kids. The legal battle was exhausting, but I was determined to protect my children. I hired a lawyer who specialized in family law, and we built a solid case. The judge granted me temporary full custody, pending the final decision. This was a significant relief, but I knew the fight wasn't over. My ex tried to portray herself as a devoted mother in court, but the evidence against her was overwhelming. In the end, the court ruled in my favor. My ex was granted supervised visitation rights, and I was awarded full custody of our children. This victory was bittersweet. I never wanted things to escalate to this point, but my priority was and always will be the safety and well-being of my kids. The process had been grueling, but it reaffirmed my commitment to being the best parent I could be. After the dust settled, I focused on rebuilding our lives. The financial strain she left behind was challenging, but I managed to stabilize our situation. I opened a new bank account, secured my finances, and made sure my ex no longer had access to any of my assets. The trust one had lost in her was irreparable, but I found solace in the fact that my children were safe and we could start to heal. Throughout this ordeal, I learned the importance of resilience and the lengths one must go to protect loved ones. My bond with my children grew stronger, and I vowed never to let anyone jeopardize their happiness and security again. The road ahead was still uncertain, but I faced it with newfound strength and determination. Amy also verified that my ex had been excessively drinking at her place to the extent of vomiting and soiling herself in the bathroom. Amy recorded her drunken episode on video for future evidence and shared a 20-minute clip with me, showing a woman completely out of control due to alcohol. The next day, I withdrew all the money from our savings account and deposited it into my new bank account to ensure I had funds to cover the bills. I closed that account to prevent her from using overdraft protection and leaving me liable for any overages. Additionally, I closed all the joint credit cards and transferred all my investment accounts into an account under my name only. When she found out, she completely lost it because she no longer had money to spend recklessly. She confided in Amy, saying she was contemplating self-harm because things had become unbearable. Despite my feelings toward my ex, I didn't want her to harm herself in any way. Amy persuaded her that she needed professional help and accompanied her to check into an inpatient mental health facility. This proved beneficial as she received the necessary assistance, but it also demonstrated that she was a danger to herself and the children. It was time to execute the final part of our plan and make it official. To ensure her reckless behavior couldn't continue, I meticulously documented everything. Amy and I worked together to gather more evidence. We installed security cameras around the house to monitor her actions and recorded any further instances of her irresponsibility. This evidence was crucial for our upcoming legal battle. I also hired a private investigator to track her activities and compile a comprehensive report on her behavior. This report included her interactions with the children, her drinking habits, and her overall state of mind. The investigator's findings painted a clear picture of a woman unfit to care for her children. With this additional evidence, we strengthened our case. The legal proceedings were intense, but my lawyer presented all the collected evidence, including the video footage, financial records, and the private investigator's report. The court was convinced of her inability to provide a safe environment for our children. Consequently, I was granted full custody, and her visitation rights were limited to supervised visits. This victory in court was a significant relief, but it came with mixed emotions. I never wanted things to reach this point, but my priority was always the safety and well-being of my children. The legal battle had been grueling, but it reaffirmed my commitment to being the best parent I could be. After the court ruling, I focused on rebuilding our lives. The financial strain she had caused was challenging, but I managed to stabilize our situation. I opened a new bank account, secured my finances, and ensured my ex no longer had access to any of my assets. The trust one had lost in her was irreparable, but I found solace in the fact that my children were safe, and we could start to heal. Throughout this ordeal, I learned the importance of resilience and the lengths one must go to protect loved ones. My bond with my children grew stronger, and I vowed never to let anyone jeopardize their happiness and security again. The road ahead was still uncertain, but I faced it with newfound strength and determination. The process of healing and rebuilding our lives would take time, but I was committed to providing a stable and loving environment for my children. We had been through a lot, but together, we would overcome the challenges and move forward with hope and resilience. I consulted with my attorney to initiate the divorce proceedings and complete the required paperwork. My attorney was shocked by my ex's actions and fully supported me in pursuing primary custody. He filed my divorce decree and also obtained a temporary restraining order from the judge until our initial hearing. We delivered the divorce papers to her while she was still in the hospital and scheduled the initial hearing for 2 weeks later. When the initial hearing arrived, she attended with her lawyer. Since this was a pre-litigation hearing, they were unaware of the evidence we possessed. She took the stand and fabricated an elaborate story, claiming I was abusive and that's what led her to the mental hospital. She presented a convincing case and put on an Oscar-worthy performance. However, it was my turn to present our case. My attorney showcased all the evidence, including videos and bank records. The turning point came when my attorney called Amy to the stand as a witness. Amy recounted a distressing tale of a neglectful mother who had spiraled out of control. She described a mother struggling with worsening substance abuse issues. Throughout Amy's testimony, my ex couldn't keep her mouth shut. Amy's revelations made her attorney appear clueless as her lies were now unraveling and contradicting what she had told him. When everything settled, the court granted me sole custody and she was given supervised visitation until she committed to rehab and further treatment. We eventually reached an agreement outside of court outlining a phased visitation schedule once she completed rehab and received mental health counseling. As part of the settlement, I retained the house after paying her a share of the equity, kept all my investment accounts, and secured 80% custody of my children. Meanwhile, she moved in with her mother for the next 2.5 years and hopped from one job to another. 5 years down the road, life is looking pretty good, especially knowing that she's no longer my responsibility. Reflecting on this journey, I realized the importance of having a solid legal strategy and support system. My lawyer's expertise and Amy's testimony were crucial in securing a favorable outcome. The ordeal taught me valuable lessons about resilience, perseverance, and the lengths one must go to protect loved ones. My children and I have rebuilt our lives, focusing on creating a stable and nurturing environment. The financial strain she caused was challenging, but I managed to stabilize our situation. I opened a new bank account, secured my finances, and ensured she no longer had access to any of my assets. The trust one had lost in her was irreparable, but I found solace in the fact that my children were safe, and we could start to heal. This experience strengthened my bond with my children and reinforced my commitment to their well-being. Throughout this ordeal, I learned the significance of documenting everything meticulously. From recording conversations to keeping track of financial transactions, every detail played a vital role in building our case. The security cameras and the private investigator's report were instrumental in painting a clear picture of her unfit parenting. The road ahead was uncertain, but I faced it with newfound strength and determination. The process of healing and rebuilding our lives would take time, but I was committed to providing a stable and loving environment for my children. We had been through a lot, but together, we would overcome the challenges and move forward with hope and resilience. My experience serves as a reminder that, despite the hardships, it's possible to emerge stronger and more determined to protect those we love.
Don't forget to subscribe, like, and click on the little bell icon for notifications of new stories.